Good morning. The New Testament reading is from Matthew chapter 10, verses 40 through 42. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. The word of the Lord. In the Old Testament, stories seem to have a lot more personal interaction between God and the people that God made. The Old Testament takes its time about playing out the stories like the one we heard today about God, Abraham, and Isaac. As a child, my Bible storybook had a fearsome, troubling, and large picture of Abraham standing over a small boy, eyes covered, hands bound in the firewood, all neatly laid out beneath him. Over the child stood his father Abraham, with knife poised to sacrificially slaughter the boy. And there was no other picture to tell me it ended up any other way. About 2 pages was the story, including that large and scary picture, and a large print story. It went like this. God said, kill your own son. Abraham gets ready to do it. God says, don't do it. And instead he finds a ram. And Abraham and his son Isaac do the holy barbecue together. And that's the end of the story. When I was in college, we zoomed through the entire Old Testament in 10 weeks so we could get to the important stuff in the New Testament. Needless to say, if I ever had time to read through the whole story once, I remembered only the picture from my childhood's storybook. It seems that the entire Old Testament is full of blood, wars, battles, famines, slavery, and a God who was as fickle with his blood and his children and even his favorites. It didn't help either that a lot of Bible stories were being made into action movies when I was a kid, like Moses and the 10 Commandments, Joseph and his brothers, Adam and Eve, Noah and a big flood, and any other stories that could be sensationalized instead of understood. Every once in a while, it is good to step back and see what the real point of a story like this one is really about. And so today, I would like to share with you the small portion of the story of God, Abraham, and Isaac. Please understand that this reading was 14 verses from chapter 22 of Genesis, but the entire story of the relationship between God and Abraham takes up 14 chapters of the Old Testament. But we're going to just do these 14 verses. Abraham has not always been a silent partner in his relationship with God. He walks with God and talks with God, and he has a good relationship with God. But Abraham is also opinionated and he doesn't hold them back. He hasn't quite always believed in all of God's promises. Like when God tells him that he will have a legitimate son by Sarah when he is 100 years old, and she is somewhere way past prime. In fact, they both just laughed at God's promise when God promised a son, and so many grandchildren that they can't be counted any more than you could count the grains of sand on a beach. God finds their laughter amusing and tells Abraham that he is to name the child Isaac, which means he who laughs. Now, that's a pretty good relationship, God and Abraham, back and forth. But what does God get out of that relationship? A puppet who does everything right? What God wants from Abraham is his trust. And God is not entirely sure that Abraham truly trusts him. Has Abraham enough trust to pass on to Isaac what he will need to be the father of a nation? God isn't sure. He has made a covenant with Abraham, so God's nation of Hebrews will come through Abraham somehow. But is Abraham ready yet? Does he trust God enough? God puts Abraham to the test. God is not playing games with Abraham. God really does not know what Abraham will do. It is a crucial moment for God as well as Abraham. Abraham, beyond a doubt, needs to prove his trust to God to take care of Isaac. God gave Abraham free will and also the instinct about protecting his offspring. God is asking Abraham to trust God's plan, to believe that God will take care of Isaac. Abraham is a righteous man. By verse 8, we see that he has made his decision already and is willing to pass on his trust to Isaac. As the young son asked him about, "Where is the sacrificial lamb, Daddy?" Abraham does not lie to his son. With every step, Abraham is increasing his trust in God. Now he shows his trust and is passing it on to his son. Abraham says to Isaac, God himself will provide the burnt offering. And they walk on together. The test God made for Abraham is already confirmed. At this point, God knows what Abraham's answer is. Abraham trusts deeply that God has his best interests at heart. And what does God get from this test? God learns. God learns for the future of his promised nation that Abraham trusts deeply. When Abraham is ready to ritually slaughter and make Isaac a burnt offering to God, the angel of the Lord does bring the message of deliverance for Isaac. Abraham has expected that God will provide the offering. And it is only after he is willing to carry out God's command that he sees the ram caught in the bushes. Total trust. Deliverance. And Abraham and Isaac immediately do carry out that burnt offering. Was the offering necessary? Oh, yes. In the case of Abraham, it's a beautiful and totally necessary offering of thanks. Now note, God would never ask Abraham to do what God was not willing to do himself. It would be many centuries before the Israelites had become so hard-headed in their leaders demanding Jesus to be sacrificed, a sacrificial lamb, and God did not stop the offering of his own Son. Jesus trusted God unto death. God went one step farther with Jesus than he had to with Abraham. This time, the test was not for Jesus to be saved. It was for the leaders of the Israelites to change their hard-hearted ways. And they failed miserably. But Jesus had placed his trust in his Abba Father, and Abba is always full of surprises. God simply raised Jesus from the dead and gives us a chance to trust God in the same way Abraham and Jesus did. We are the people of God's love. Some of us have trusted some of the time, some not so much. But God has provided for us all if we trust. Now, here is a clear message from God. When are the rest of us really going to trust him?